Hello, everyone. We're going to give people a few seconds to join, but we'll get started soon.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of the Climate Ready Workforce Symposium. I hope you guys are doing well. Lauren, would you like to go over the technical aspects before we get started?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, you can email me. My email is in the chat. Today, if you are a speaker and you would like to turn on your camera and your mic only when you are giving your presentations, you can find those options along the bottom of your screen, the mic option to unmute and the camera option to turn on your camera. So please, during the rest of the symposium, keep your camera off unless you are speaking. And then we will take questions in the question box. And if we do not have time to respond to your question directly during the symposium, our project teams will collect those and provide the emails to the project team. So please let us know what teams you're asking the questions to in the question box. And then in the chat function, we will be communicating anything to you there, but you will not be able to enter into the chat. You will only be able to ask questions through the question box. So go ahead and take it away, Po.
Thank you. It was super wonderful to hear so much more about the 4 projects yesterday. And we're going to begin our day 2 with the remaining 5 projects. So Mary, take it away.
Thanks, Po. Welcome back, everybody. We've got a few more project presentations to dive into, and each of them are going to have 13 minutes, same as yesterday, to present. And at the 12-minute mark, I'll come back on camera, put my hand up, and just let you know that it's time to wrap up. I will intervene if you end up going over 13 minutes. And excited to hear more about your projects. And for clarification with the questions, we will continue to ask just one question after each presentation. And those questions, you can ask them within the question box, which is in the upper right hand of your screen with a little question mark on it. So we'll be monitoring that and asking questions only if they are typed in there. So let's get today started with hearing from Amy, and Roderick might not be here today, but Amy, take it away. She's presenting CREST, the Climate Resilient Skills Training Program.
All right. Well, thank you, Mary, and thanks, everybody. Yes, I represent the CREST, the Climate Resilient Skills Training Program, which we won $6.9 million on the very first award that I've worked on, so I'm kind of excited about that. We're going to be piloting the program out of Louisiana. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. It looks like we're already, let's keep going. I think we got a little lag time. Right, so that's all we're flood mitigation industry. There we go, thank you so much. So Rod is really great explaining this, but I'll give it my best shot. The National Flood Insurance Protection Program, the rates started to rise in 2014. And by 2024, the rates had increased up to the half amount of what they were going to be allowed to, because we all know that insurance is really being affected by intensity and frequency of extreme events. The insurers are on the hook for the payouts of climate-related events. By 2034, those actual risks rates will be achieved. And so there's really not a lot of time before the buildings become devalued. And according to the banking industry, we're looking at upwards of $1 trillion in overall assets. So that's a lot of money at stake. And basically, the Flood Insurance Industry Association is going to be able to support creating some solutions. And that's what our program is all about. So let's go to the next slide. This is the location in southwest coastal Louisiana that we have identified as the CGIST location, where all of our low-income communities are. We've got Calcasieu Parish, Cameron Parish, and Vermilion Parish. We'll be piloting the program out of Lake Charles, Louisiana. The goal is to gear up for the coming U.S. Army Corps of Engineer mega projects, and there's 1,000 structural elevation programs that have been funded. There's still approximately 2,000 that need to obtain funding for dry and wet flood proofing projects. And ultimately, this program seeks to build the workforce to be able to create these solutions, not just for Louisiana, but for all coastal communities, not just in the United States, but on a global level. We do seek to be able to expand this into other territories, possibly Puerto Rico. We're looking at offering it in English as well as Spanish. So right now, you can see what the little icons on this map show. They kind of depict what structural elevation and dry and wet flood proofing look like. All right, let's move on to the next slide, please. So basically, the program outlines the basics of what's going to be taught. We have a company called E-Curriculum, and they're designing the curriculum for us. We're going to be teaching dry and wet flood proofing, installation, and offering certifications. We're also going to be teaching structural elevation, how to lift those structures up so that the water doesn't have its way, as we all know with what just happened with Helene and Milton. We're also going to offer an introduction to nature-based solutions, and of course, we're going to be teaching Climate 101. We have a great group of partners with our NOAA affiliates that we've been able to engage with this program, and I have a background in the nature-based solutions area, so that's going to be a natural to be able to create programs that support what the Flood Mitigation Industry Association is doing, plus the climate desire and the nature-based solutions desire. There are additional integrated educational opportunities like OSHA 30, first aid, commercial driver's license, and equipment operator certification as well. And some of the other wraparound services will include financial services, education, literacy, and a variety of other things. We'll be basing it at Sewella Technical College, which is located in the Lake Charles area. And so this first pilot program, we're really looking forward to engaging a lot of the Louisiana-based community organizations. All right, let's move on to the next slide, please. Here's a great graphic, kind of sums it up. Picture speaks 1,000 words of what's going on. There to the left is the dry flood proofing, where water can move between and underneath and through the structure. Structural elevation is just that, where you elevate the structure a certain amount of feet. And again, I'm certainly no expert on this. I'll become more expert on it, but this is really Rod's bailiwick. And then, of course, integrating stabilization, resilience area through nature-based solutions and oyster beds and other types of grasses and mangroves, perhaps, maybe not in Louisiana per se, but this is a great graphic that kind of explains it all, and you don't really need to know much more about what's going on in the flood mitigation industry to pretty much understand what this graphic is depicting. All right, let's move on to the next slide, please. We, as briefly mentioned, we are going to be focused on recruiting from the Lake Charles area, and we have a strong background focusing on the low-income, marginalized, vulnerable communities. My background is working in the credit union space in the community development financial institutions, and so it's a natural fit to be able to pull in partners that will bring this lens to the program. We have a wonderful group named KEI Marketing. They have worked with historically Black and other colored communities, and they're going to be our primary point of contact to be able to go where the people are at, recruit them, and give them the support through the wraparound services that they need to succeed in this program. So we're pretty excited about having them on board. All right, next slide, please. Calcasieu Paris, this got the CEGA code there. This is considered a track that's been disadvantaged by a number of the key points that create the justice tracks. The workforce has been damaged over the years through a lot of the hurricanes, and so we're seeking to be able to stabilize that through this training program. Next slide, please. Here are some of the key members and collaborators. I mean, we've got people from all over Louisiana, including the Governor's Office of Resilience. Some of the Louisiana programs, LSU is going to be working with us, one of the NOAA affiliates. We have obviously the industry experts who are participating in this program, who are going to be teaching the structural elevation, the flood mitigation solutions. We'll be leaning heavily on our SCIP and LSU climate experts to enhance our introduction to nature-based solutions. We'll be running workshops simultaneously on Climate 101. We'll be in laboratory work as well too, where people will actually be structurally elevating a building, engaging in dry and wet flood proofing. So it's going to be a pretty rich, diverse experience, and we're going to be working with a really great cross section of people who are supporting the program, and more are stepping on board as we speak. All right, next slide, please. All right, just a couple of quick pictures. Again, this is not my expertise at this particular point, but I certainly will become more expert in it as I continue to work in this program. These are some pictures of structural elevation jobs with a unified hydraulic jacking machine, and that's the machine that helps to jack the building up. Apparently, they're quite impressive. Next slide, please. This is dry flood proofing installation certification that will be occurring, where they attach materials to the outside of the building to help keep them from getting moisture in them. Next slide, please. And then you have wet flood proofing jobs where, again, it keeps the water out, but that's about as much as I can tell you because I am not a flood mitigation expert. Next slide, please. This is the schedule, and I know everyone's a little bit off because we got our award notices kind of late, but we are currently in the design phase and expect to start training by the end of July, hopefully by beginning of August of next year, and possibly even sooner. So we are designing our curriculum with all of the components that I briefly explained to you. And then we have a 3-year grant, so we'll be implementing it for 2 subsequent years after. We are getting a tremendous amount of interest to be able to bring this to other communities, other coastal communities in other areas across the United States right now. Next slide, please. And that's it. This is our contact information. There's Rod Scott. He is the chairman of the Flood Mitigation Industry Association. And my name is Amy Rapp, and I am with Climate Resilience Solutions. We're enjoying getting a chance to meet everybody, and we look forward to working with all of you in the future. That's it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Amy. Next up, and questions. I'm going to check quickly, and it looks like we don't currently have any questions. And if any roll around, we'll be sure to catalog them or come back to you, Amy and Roderick. So next up, we've got Trin, Sarah, and Jody with the Greater Boston Coastal Resilience Jobs Alliance. Take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. We are incredibly excited to be working with you all. Trin may join us, but I know she's had multiple conflicts today. So I'm going to kick us off and do a little bit of an overview. First, you'll notice we have slightly changed the name of our project. It's now the Greater Boston Climate and Coastal Resilience Workforce Alliance because we felt the term workforce better reflected the kind of work that we were doing than just jobs. But we will get into that in just a minute. If you can go to the next slide. So we are with the City of Boston Office of Workforce Development, and the project that we have is really rooted in the City of Boston's climate um, planning and resilience planning. And if folks don't know, Boston is a coastal city. We are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And in fact, a recent study showed that by not 2070, the annualized losses from coastal and river flooding could be almost 1.4 billion. That's per year, annualized. We have 47 miles of coastline, and we have spent an enormous amount of time in planning for our resilience, both to mitigate the impact of climate change, but also our resilience. And much of that planning has happened within the frame of Mayor Michelle Wu's Green New Deal, which provides an implementation framework for achieving our goals. We've already invested quite a lot our into green jobs, green work, green investments, and the Green New Deal is really the framework for that. Next slide. So, what is the City of Boston's Green New Deal? It is our vision for tackling the climate crisis with policies that address economic, social, and racial inequities while advancing health, livability, and justice throughout all of our Boston neighborhoods. And you can see the diagram that the Green New Deal is really at the center of a climate friendly, just, and livable city. And the policies of the Green New Deal are all focused on that. Next slide. The pillars of the Green New Deal, all of the policies are based on these 5 pillars. So build a resilient physical and nature-based infrastructure, foster a green workforce, reduce barriers to transit access, decarbonize the built environment, and invest in clean energy solutions. Our work around the Greater Boston, I'm just going to call it the Alliance rather than we've quickly shortened to it, is really focused on the first 2, building a resilient physical and nature-based infrastructure and fostering a green workforce. Next slide. That's because we truly believe we cannot have a climate ready city without a climate ready workforce here in Boston. We also really believe that the communities that have been most impacted by the impacts of climate change should be able to benefit from the economic investments that we are making in order to address climate and the climate crisis. So next slide. Our approach has a few different components to it. We are working on a Green New Deal workforce needs assessment, which is looking at the investments that we will need to make in order to build a climate resilient city and what jobs, will be created and the skills that will be needed in order to access those jobs, and an inventory of our training landscape. And while we are doing that, we are also simultaneously launching and fully implementing the Greater Boston Climate and Coastal Resilience Workforce Alliance. Sarah's going to talk a lot more about what is actually involved in that. And we are seeding the first Climate Business and Workforce Development Center in Boston. All of this work is leading to a larger framework for the Climate Business and Workforce Development Center that we are building. Next slide. The Green New Deal Workforce Needs Assessment that I talked about is focused on 4 key priorities for the city: building decarbonization, transportation electrification, clean energy, and as we've talked about, resilience and nature-based solutions. And again, while we are in the midst of finalizing that Green New Deal Workforce Needs Assessment, we are not waiting for it. We already know that the work that we are doing through the Climate Ready Workforce Grant focused on resilience and nature-based solutions is critical work. And in fact, while we were doing the application for our Climate Ready Workforce Grant, we really pulled from the data that the preliminary data of our Green New Deal Workforce Needs Assessment to inform that. And with that, I will hand it off to Sarah to go a little bit more in depth on exactly what our project is, how it was informed by labor market analysis, and our process for moving forward. Sarah?
Thank you, Jody. Hi, everyone. As Jody mentioned, the Greater Boston Climate and Coastal Resilience Workforce Alliance, or the short name, the Alliance, is the name of our project. The goal is to allow the Alliance to train and place individuals in jobs that not only enhance coastal and climate resilience, but within that support the following 5 strategies. We have identified those strategies and goals within each of these strategies based on reports, plans, and studies that have been conducted in the greater Boston area in the past 5 to 10 years. And those identify what are the most critical aspects that we are facing. And very briefly, these strategies center around green infrastructure and nature-based solutions, our water, wastewater, and stormwater systems. Construction, we have a construction strategy around building critical flood and coastal protection infrastructure. We have a big emphasis within this project on municipal services and especially emergency preparedness and response capabilities. And then the final strategy centers around climate and coastal resilience and the awareness and increasing that awareness through community education and outreach. Within this project, we in the next 4 years, we will be training 645 individuals, although we received bigger commitments from employers. And as Jody mentioned, this is part of a larger strategy that we are implementing at the city level. Next slide. This chart gives you a sense of the variety of stakeholders that we are bringing on board to make the work of the Alliance successful. We are bringing on board different type of expertise from climate and workforce development expertise, training partners, union representatives, organizations supporting us with economic development, community engagement and outreach, and wraparound supporting services. And we also have different type of employers on board who already committed different type of jobs. And we have large businesses and public sector employers, but we also have small businesses. And this ecosystem is facilitated by a coalition of cabinets and offices at the City of Boston. Next slide. Oh, next one. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, yeah, okay. So those are to give you a sense of the type of training partners that we have on board. They train individuals within each of these strategies. They offer different type of programs with credentials that are recognized in those fields, and they have different lengths. Next slide. And what we are in the process of doing, we are assessing the status of some of these training programs. They are already existing. Some of them are in the process of being developed or being adjusted. But what we are looking at is something that goes beyond the technical training. And we will be procuring for some of the positions to add where it's needed additional training around, soft skills and job readiness skills, but also support in terms of outreach and recruitment, career mapping and awareness, and job retention and evaluation components. Next slide. overall, the approach that we are using within this project is a more holistic approach. So we are combining, again, technical expertise and expert capacity with training program providing credentials within these fields, and also supporting services that we know are key for people's success in training and in transitioning into the job market. And again, all of this is coordinated by the City of Boston, as we are functioning as the backbone organization. Next slide. So just want to give you a quick sense of what we have been doing so far. As everybody else has mentioned, we are in a planning phase as well. A couple of things we have been doing are around extending our internal capacity, convening partners, and we had our first advisory board meeting late in November. We had this Monday our first kickoff alliance meeting, and then we have this symposium, and this sort of wrap up the big events for this year. But we have a full calendar of events planned for next year. If we can go to next slide. So we are planning, on your right, you can see some of the key points throughout every year where we are planning to convene all of our partners and core partners at different stages to leverage that power of convening and allow the system to realign. And I will talk a little bit more about that. And then on your left, you have our goals for every year. We intend to have the bulk of training and placement on year 2 and year 3, but we also have additional goals. For example, ensuring that we reach the right population that is usually underrepresented and underserved. And the second one is building a long-term infrastructure and guarantee its sustainability, because again, as we mentioned, this is part of a larger effort that we are implementing. And we can go to next slide. This briefly, again, gives a sense of the core partners that we engaged so far, and the gray circles indicate the new positions that we'll be procuring for in the next few months. We can go to next slide. And what we have been doing also is the system alignment, and this is something that we intend to do every year. So talking to each of the partners and specifically align employers' needs and training providers' needs, bringing together also the expertise of the advisory board and the climate experts. So for employers, we looked at what are their needs, their vacancies, and minimum requirements for some of these positions. And on the training provider side, we looked at their capacity, their curricula development and adjustment, the program's length and cycles. And right now we are in the process of aligning the system to start implementing the grant and train folks next year. And we can go to next slide. This gives you just a brief sense. I'm not going to go over the whole presentation, but just a few challenges that are emerging that we intend to address, and we are funding strategies for that. And we will be doing, again, this work every year. And we can go to next slide so I can go over some of the next steps. So we are going to finish conversation with training providers, identify and align gaps and align the system, and moving forward with additional procurement processes and hiring. And I think that's the final slide. Maybe there is another one. Yes, so I stop there and take any questions.
Thank you so much, Sarah, Jody. Great insights. I'm not seeing any questions at the moment. And of course, as other questions may trickle in, we will catalog those for later on or loop back to you. So thank you so much. Next up, we've got Kendra with Los Angeles County Climate Ready Employment Council. Hi, Kendra.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Next slide.
And your microphone is a little bit muffled to me.
Oh, wait.
If you could just try
Is that
this.
better?
Try again.
Is that better?
A little bit better. I'll interject if we can't hear you, but that sounds a bit better to me.
Okay, perfect. On the next slide, please. I don't see the slides. Can keep going. Another slide. I know there's a little bit of a delay. Okay. So just another overview. I know we discussed this yesterday, but I just wanted to provide an additional overview of our project. So again, the purpose of our project is to strengthen the climate resilience through workforce development. We're going to be focused on low-income and climate-impacted neighborhoods within the county of Los Angeles. And our idea is to engage partners, create training programs, and increase workforce readiness for climate-related jobs. Next slide. So I talked a little bit about this yesterday in terms of our service location. The council is comprised of many members all over LA County, and we're going to be focusing our work in LA County, even though, yes.
Hi, Kendra. I'm so sorry. I don't want you to go too far without everybody being able to hear you. I'm getting notes that several folks are also hearing that your voice is a little muffled.
Okay,
So if
let
there's
me see
any.
if I can. Hold on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me much better than you could with my headset?
Try it one more time.
Okay, one second.
Thanks everybody for your patience here. We
Yeah,
want to
sorry about
hear
that.
presenting.
Can you hear me now? Much better?
That is a little bit better.
I'm not sure why it's not working. Or
That's better for me.
yes, you can hear me now. Okay, and I'll
Yeah.
try to project my voice as well.
Okay.
I don't know if we need to go back or not, but I was talking a little bit about the service location again, just highlighting that this is, though Long Beach City College is serving as the backbone organization for this work, our primary service area is in the entire county of Los Angeles, again, which is home to 9.5 million people. 75% who are people of color, and 14 who are below the poverty line. So again, we're hoping we plan and who we hope to serve in this with this grant. It's really those folks who are impacted by the different climate hazards near our poor communities because of pollution and other climate-related hazards. Next slide. So I mentioned yesterday that we had a LA County climate, was an LA climate vulnerability assessment done. They identified various threats, wildfires. You know, in California, we're experiencing extreme heat, wildfires, flooding, and even drought. So all of those things threaten the stability of our electrical grid, and then also it's highlighted workforce shortages with our aging population moving out of the workforce. The need in certain occupations is becoming greater. And so what we did is we took the information gathered through that assessment, aligned with those threats. We identified two initial sectors to begin our immediate response project, which is on wastewater and solar. And so with our wastewater occupations, what we're looking at are in wastewater treatment, so like our sewage treatment, water treatment, sludge management, pumping stations to work. Those folks are going to be doing the testing and electronics there. And then with our solar, it's going to be solar installation, building and construction, and other design techniques related to solar. So we identify those immediately, and then we will build on that with grants and their assessment of additional jobs in the climate sector where there's a gap. So next slide. I mentioned who our partners were yesterday. These partners are essential to the council and being able to move the work forward. A lot of work here in LA County kind of gets done in a silo, so we have different entities all over the county who are working on some aspect of climate readiness workforce, but our job is to be the convener of all of these different folks, so climate practitioner partners, workforce development partners, employers, community-based organizations, and so forth. And we're really counting on RAD to really expand upon the assessment. So RAD plays an important role in this, in that we've identified the vulnerability assessment that we need to focus right now on water and wastewater treatment and solar. However, in speaking to some of our industry partners, we also are hearing from them that there are other gaps. So what we want to do is expand on the work that has already been done in assessing some of our workforce needs by having RAD do a more extensive study across LA County, because Long Beach is one small big city within the county. The county is far and wide, and so we want to be able to focus on the issues that are impacting different parts of the county and really make sure that we're meeting the workforce demands and providing a talent pipeline based on the different cities that make up the county of Los Angeles. So that's what we're actually doing. Next slide. So I mentioned that Long Beach City College will be the backbone organization for this project. We're going to be convening, serve as a convener to establish an infrastructure to support our climate resilient work and training and placement related goals to key occupations that increase the science and climate related hazards. As I mentioned, we recognize that in LA County, this is an emerging sector that has been embedded in every industry within the county. And we're just, again, trying to figure out a way forward, right? And so by convening, as a convener, getting all the heavy players in the room, the public, the private, nonprofit, tribal, educational entities, we will really be able to identify what the areas of need are and then address those through this project. Next slide. The council has 4 major tasks. Again, convening our stakeholders, providing expertise. We provide expertise that informs the regional workforce needs assessment. So we want to be able to hear from the experts. We want to help prioritize which sectors and industries identified in the needs assessment should be chosen for the development of training and job placement services. And this is super important for us as a community college or for those educational providers, because you may all know that sometimes community college curriculum development doesn't move as fast as we need it to, right? To be so responsive. But we're seeing that early on, we want to be able to identify what those needs are so that we can then work within our current curriculum or develop needed curriculum to meet the needs of our employer partners so that we can get our residents, our students trained and placed in the jobs that are going to be vacant and that are currently vacant. I heard recently from our Water Workforce Council that there are over 200 jobs currently vacant that are crucial to them being able to preserve and maintain our water safety. And we're looking at it from a different perspective of not just the technical skills that someone needs to come in and do maybe odor control or water treatment, but thinking about those other jobs and key pieces in terms of project management and those types of things that also may be needed as part of this work. So we're looking to really utilize as assessment as a stepping stone for developing additional curriculum so we can prepare the next workforce. And then we want to act as a platform through which employers can engage with us and identifying the job opportunities so that we can, again, meet their needs. And they're super key to this component. Employers are super key to this project. And we already had at the set of this project, because everyone is interested, tons of pledges for jobs. But what, my biggest thought to our partners is how do we get students interested in these jobs when not everyone wakes up and says, I want to work in some kind of resilient job. I want to work in water. I want to work in solar. And so we're going to have to do a lot of marketing. So next slide. So I just want to point out that we will be serving disadvantaged communities and workers. And as I mentioned just recently, we're going to have a very expansive marketing campaign that promotes the water industry, the solar industry, and other climate resilient related jobs to our underserved communities and populations, because it just seems to be a disconnect. And just understanding that there is major opportunities for growth within the sector as well. But again, it's about how do we get underserved communities and students at college even, or at the community college level, to even understand what does a job in water look like, what does a job in energy look like, and what other climate-related jobs are there available that I may be interested in if it's not something that is often publicized. So we're really working on a marketing campaign. We realize that we serve a diverse group of people, specifically those who speak Spanish, Khmer, Tagalog, and so we want to make sure that we, are reaching out to them. We're engaging with community-based organizations that are already serving these populations, like Central Cha, really for as a recruitment, as a way to reach out to the community and to get members to actually come and get trained with us. We're looking at engagement and recruitment within LVCC programming, serving disadvantaged communities, and this is really through our learning communities that already exist at our campus. We're leveraging workforce development board programs that support, these specific populations for recruitment as well, because our workforce development partners are also looking to ensure that the students that they're serving, the participants and community members that they're serving, are also ready and prepared to enter these jobs. And they have each workforce development system. There are 7 different workforce development boards in LA County, and they sit in various areas of the county and all have a unique population of people that they're serving, whether they're English language learners, whether they're homeless or housing or food insecure individuals, whether they're veterans. And so we're looking to touch all of those within our various communities in LA County. We want to also connect our participants with within these populations to relevant internships and work-based learning opportunities. And this is very key because, again, how do you get someone who hasn't worked in these fields before to become interested in it? Well, we need to match that with our curriculum. So we try to look at a learn and learn model while they're learning on the job. What internship or work-based learning experience can we give them, and then also potentially stipend them. So we're talking about creating a climate core or a volunteer core type activity, but also thinking about ways that we can leverage existing funding at the college to help support work-based learning and actually pay them, because we don't want students deciding, okay, I have to go to work, or do I come to this training program that has the potential for me to earn a living wage versus I need my immediate needs currently right now. So we're looking at ways to be able to mitigate some of those concerns so that we can ensure that we are targeting those disadvantaged populations and those agencies and those who are serving them, and leveraging the funding opportunities we have to better support them through this process while they're completing training. Next slide. So this is kind of our participant life cycle with recruiting. They're going to do training, employment, and then follow-up support is super important. So we want to be able to track that they receive the job, identify any additional follow-up supports they may need, whether that's childcare, whether that's tools. What does that look like for them to move through our participant life cycle, so that making sure that those supports and capital supports that they need are provided to them as they move through each cycle of our participant life cycle. Next slide. So our expected outcome, again, is to create an infrastructure to support LA County, climate resilience through training and placement, and again, those climate-related hazard areas. We plan for training to be deployed to multiple locations and multiple providers throughout the county of Los Angeles. So we're working on an interactive website, where we can kind of map and connect students to different training programs in our climate-related fields. We have to, throughout this project, recruit and train at least 330 individuals, and also train 173, and we have a 70% placement goal for our project. Next slide, please. So I wanted just to provide a little update on where we're at right now. So we did get our board approval after we received our grant acknowledgement, and we have the budget all set up. We had already been trying to do some pre-work and getting an advisory council established. And so because there's two different councils that we want to entertain at the same time, because we identified a number of water and solar. We started off with working with an existing water ad hoc group within the county of Los Angeles, and asked them if they would then have members of that ad hoc group serve as our water industry advisory council, so that we can begin to establish what that council is responsible for, what kind of training programs we need, and those type of things. So we already met twice, established a purpose with our water industry folks, and we plan to do the same thing with our solar related advisory group. We're going to have council meetings, finalize our marketing plans, secure MOUs with grant and real alternatives who's going to be working on the solar, and begin consultant onboarding and program rollouts. This also is going to have somebody who is not me. I am the vice president of the campus who's overseeing this work. There will be a designated program director for this project who has a background and expertise in this field, who will probably work with a lot more than myself. And so that person is currently being onboarded as we speak. I think that's it for my next slide. Is like my email contact, but again, more information. I look forward to hearing about how everything kind of works out for everyone in the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kendra. And I'm going to check if we have any questions briefly. And I don't currently see questions for this presentation, so we'll move on to the next. We have Kai presenting about climate resilience training to implement nature-based solutions in the Caribbean. Thanks, Kai.
Mary, good afternoon, everybody from the U.S. Virgin Islands in the Caribbean. It's currently 3:46 p.m. I appreciate hearing everybody's projects. We are all bound in common goals, and I see a lot of synergy and overlap, and so thank you all for sharing. My name is Kainik Rieli Monroe, or just Kai is fine, and I am here on behalf of Protectores de Cuencas. They are the primary awardee for this project. Unfortunately, they give their regards. They are in a conference in person right now and just couldn't make it. I, however, am a scientist and project manager with the Horsley Witten Group, the sub-awardee to Protectores de Cuencas on this project. And I will share a little bit about it with you, titled Climate Resilience Training to Implement Nature-Based Solutions in the Caribbean. And I just want to say thank you to NOAA for identifying this project and our needs. Protectores de Cuencas and the Horsley Witten Group are going to be partnering together to lead this project. Protectores de Cuencas is a nonprofit organization based in Puerto Rico in the Caribbean, and they are dedicated to the conservation and restoration of watersheds across Puerto Rico. They have a lot of experience in design and implementing green infrastructure practices and nature-based solutions. I am with the Horsley Witten Group, and the Horsley Witten Group is an engineering, design, and environmental consulting firm based in Sandwich, Massachusetts, with offices in New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and here in the Virgin Islands, where I am. The Horsley Witten Group has an extensive experience in green infrastructure planning and design, and are experienced in developing training programs related to ecological restoration and climate resilience. And together, Protectores de Cuencas and the Horsley Witten Group have a long-standing working relationships that I believe will provide, will be integral to the success of this project. Next slide, please. Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands are in the Caribbean, and the Caribbean is vulnerable to climate change and projections of increased storms, their frequency and intensities, droughts, extreme heat events, and sea level rise. And climate resilience issues include high exposure to natural hazards. We have lots of fragile ecosystems. We have tons of aging infrastructure and an exceptionally high cost of reconstruction. Where are we? Puerto Rico is the larger island in the U.S. Territories here in the Caribbean, and the top left picture is a picture I took recently from an airplane looking north over the capital of San Juan. In the distance, you can see the Atlantic Ocean, and this is their city. You can imagine the communities that are facing climate change, projections of increased storms, intensity, frequency. We are islands. We are completely surrounded by the sea. So these threats are very real to us. We also have really beautiful, unique ecosystems here, such as mangrove forests and coral reefs. Mangrove forests here provide shoreline protection and improve our water quality as water runs off into the sea. Their carbon sinks. Yet they face threats as sea level rises. They need to retreat, and oftentimes there are roads or infrastructure already in place, so they don't have the space to retreat. So those forests are threatened. On the bottom left is a picture of elkhorn coral. It lives here, and it has been devastated by increased sea surface temperatures. Among many other species here. And coral reefs are very important to the people and the communities here because they historically have been a food source and habitat for fisheries, as well as protecting our coastlines from storm surge. The people of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands are primarily Hispanic, tribal, and Afro-Caribbean in descent, and are historically underserved and under-resourced. We, especially here in the Virgin Islands, experience brain drain and a lack of expertise in climate resilient workforce. And because we are surrounded by the sea, I believe that this is a very important topic. And I appreciated something that someone said, I think it was Jody, that we can't be prepared without the workforce. I don't believe we have a prepared workforce here, so I'm very excited to be working on this project. Next slide, please. Our goals and objectives. Our primary goal is to simply expand capacity in the climate resilient workforce in the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. And our specific objectives include identifying training needs in the industries and what the gaps are. Then we will develop curricula and increase access to existing curricula. And then we will train at least 50 people to prepare them in the workforce. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Our project tasks are divided into 2 phases. And phase 1 is the program design, where we are going to identify the skills needed in the gaps that exist to build a more climate resilient workforce. Currently, we're thinking along the lines of land-based sources of pollution, solutions, erosion control, culvert retrofits, stormwater management designs, things that it will increase water quality, both potable and marine, and also water security. Mangrove and coral restoration have come to the top also. Many more things may come as we continue our partnerships and assess what those data gaps and needs are. The second phase is implementation, where we will take the curricula that we've developed and then lead free technical training programs for 50 to 60 workers on climate-informed skills, while providing participant support via stipends, which is tremendous here because poverty levels are very high and the demographics here could use this support to make this program successful. So that's great. And then we will work with local employers to identify opportunities for newly trained workers to be placed in jobs. Next slide, please. And that's it. I want to thank you for your time and attention as we come nearly to the end of this phase. And reach out if you want to collaborate or share at any time. And thank you again, Noah.
Thank you so much. And let me check to see if any questions rolled in. We'll certainly have more opportunity for collaboration between awardees and projects in closed sessions this afternoon and tomorrow, and ongoing throughout the years that these projects are functioning. I do
Thanks.
have one question that just rolled in, and that is, will the technical training programs result in certifications?
We hope so. We are just in the infancy of assessing what the gaps are and what the needs are. And when we do that, we will certainly be looking for things that can go on resumes, such as certifications. And we are totally open to different pathways and degrees and programs that already exist. We have a university here that are working on some interesting topics as well. So if there's ways that we can collaborate and come up with certifications, for sure, that is of interest.
Thank you, Kai. Others, if you have questions for Kai or speakers beforehand, feel free to plug those into the question box and we will loop back to them. We'll move along now to our final presentation within this section by Hannah Marie, and she'll be talking about expanding and strengthening an Indigenous workforce for climate resilience in Alaska. And we also have Haley. Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary. Yeah, I'm joined by Haley as well. Good to see everyone again this morning. It's currently 11 a.m. here on Denali Lands in Anchorage, Alaska. And we'll just go ahead and dive right in. Next slide, please. These first two slides are going to be, again, a little bit of a recap of what we covered yesterday, but just the background and the context of the need for this type of work is that we are sitting in the larger context of the Arctic, the United States' only Arctic state, and it's warming at a 3 times faster rate than the global average. And so our Alaskan communities, especially Indigenous, are experiencing very significant impacts. The scale of our state as well, due to lack of roads and also population size, requires a real need to engage and meaningfully work with the communities who are on the ground and kind of flip the research models as well from helicopter researching coming in and collecting data and working very closely with the 229 tribes in this state to really focus on the demand for training and the interest in supporting our communities to meet them where they're at and respect the lifeways and knowledges that are so important in developing the climate adaptation plans. Next slide, please. I'm going to briefly gloss over this one as well because our friends with the Tribal Stewardship Project, Glenda and her team, kind of covered this context yesterday. But just for a refresher, a lot of what we're talking about when it comes to tribes and tribal nations needs to be understood that tribes are not a monolith. So our project is just speaking to our region and has many diverse groups and cultures involved in it. And the essence of tribal sovereignty is, again, that ability to govern ourselves and to protect and enhance the health, safety, and welfare of our tribal citizens within tribal territory. So we are sitting in the same levels of federal and state government agencies often. And the graphic in the bottom left is courtesy of the Alaska Center for Climate Assessment and Policy. And I just wanted to highlight that because a lot of what we're seeing as more research and funding is being directed towards the Arctic and climate change research. Simultaneously, a lot of efforts are shifting to center Indigenous knowledge and co-production of research with rural community tribes. And it's great to see that, but we are also compounded with a lot of continuous need to educate our partners on who are unfamiliar with Alaska and our governing systems and help them understand the depth of our worldview as Native Alaskan peoples. And we're also constantly asked to engage on a variety of projects from fisheries, natural resource research, education, federal government, state government, NGOs. This just shows you the long list of things that we are all trying to handle in addition to running our own communities. So I'll leave it there and pass it to Haley to get some background on the rest of the project too.
Yeah, so go to the next slide, please. And kind of providing some background on the Aleut community of St. Paul Island. ACSBI is a federally recognized tribe with over 1,800 total members and roughly 468 members that reside primarily on St. Paul Island. While St. Paul is a smaller Alaskan community, I want to dive into a little history on why St. Paul has such a large foothold and blueprint of partnerships within the state of Alaska. And it's due to its rich history with the federal government and global interest that is tied to the ecological diversity and richness of the Bering Sea that has made their tribal government uniquely equipped to be a leader in environmental monitoring work and in preparing a climate-ready workforce. Most folks, even those that reside within the state of Alaska, don't realize how important St. Paul was to Alaska being purchased by the United States. This was motivated by millions of northern fur seals that mate off of the beaches of St. Paul, with the fur seal trade being a driving economic force of colonization of the Aleutian Islands. But specifically, the Unanga community of St. Paul and our neighbors, St. George Island, were wards of the United States government until 1984 to use their expertise in harvesting the northern fur seal. Their freedom in the 80s is closely tied to the depletion of the fur seal population from the overharvest by the Russian and United States government. This population decline of the seal is something that has continued over time with the effects of climate change. And because of that, ACSBI plays a crucial role in efforts to restore and protect the health of the Bering Sea ecosystem through co-management agreements. To showcase additional ecological diversity on the island, there's over 200 species of birds that reside just on St. Paul alone, where the community and other coastal communities have witnessed multiple large seabird die-offs due to climate change. It is home to the biggest snow crab processing plant in the nation, with in 2018 and 2019, snow crab experiencing an over 90% population decline, with roughly 10 billion snow crabs disappearing from the Bering Sea over a span of 4 years. With the city's economy dependent about 90% on the harvest of snow crab. But lastly, I want to note that a subsistence lifestyle in St. Paul is still prevalent. The community relies on a thriving environment to survive and practice their cultural values. And then in providing just some other additional background on the Bering Sea campus, and to give context, the campus is unique from other educational entities in that we actually sit under our Department of Business and Economic Development within the tribal government, primarily because we were created to provide and create educational programs revolved around new economic opportunities. The tribe has really worked to diversify the economy of St. Paul due to the effects of climate change just noted, and we have been a crucial arm in that endeavor. Next slide.
Awesome, thanks, Haley. And so part of this work too is to collaborate with the campus, and the tribal government is a backboard organization, and so is the Indigenous Sentinels Network. So we are also a department within the tribe. We were established in 1999. So over the past 20 years, the existence of ISN came about due to those decline and the interest in monitoring our resources on the island. And we have now expanded statewide, seeing the map on the bottom left, to working with other tribes who are also interested in using technology to empower their communities to collect data, address data sovereignty issues, and really aiming to address this urgent need to increase the spatial depth of our data collection. And sorry, there's a little formatting issues on this screen, but essentially what ISN is provides is we provide access to software. So helping communities develop their own surveys, have access to a database, do some data analysis, provide quality assurance on all of the information that they're collecting from harvest, from weather monitoring, from community survey forums. And then we also provide programmatic support that is part of this, the networking, collaboration, outreach, and training. So that's a little bit of the history briefly on what ISN is. It's this massive network that is supporting tribes in creating their own monitoring programs and empowering communities to lead in that, do collaborative research with researchers, and really kind of aiming to, again, address the urgent need to increase information on what's happening in the state of Alaska as climate change is rapidly increasing. Next slide. And so ISN has about 20 active projects occurring statewide, and each of those are at various stages of planning, onboarding, and outreach. And so what that means is that we have communities such as Tlingit and Haida who have already established a network that are wanting to work with 8 guardians in their region, Southeast Alaska, to start monitoring. And they've identified that they now need that training support from ISN that we're hoping to develop through this project to get their guardians ready to do on-the-ground monitoring on salmon restorations or marine mammal harvests. We're also working with COERIC, onboarding communities in the Northern Bering Sea. They're not on the road system, so having community members have the empowerment and tools in their back pocket to start to collaborate on coastal erosion issues. Interior tribes, such as the Tanana Chiefs Conference, monitoring illegal hunting activities on their land is a priority for them, so we're developing curriculum, hoping to, again, train them on how to use the software to start to collect that data. Next slide. And a lot of this network is, again, just a flash of the past couple of projects and key collaborators. Again, a lot of our web of partners are the backbone organization of St. Paul, and we are connecting to larger NOAA partners, data centers, University of Alaska, and primarily working to work with state and federal agencies to also find positions for our Sentinels and Guardians, those that receive this training, to then be on the ground and implementing projects that are either in collaboration with federal agency research priorities and or meeting the priorities from their communities and the tribal governments that they want to collect data. So this is just, again, a refresher of all the various partners involved in this work. Next slide. And lastly, kind of reiterating what a lot of other groups have said, in order to build a climate resilient communities, you need climate ready workforce. That's not only supported by training, but really the approach that we're taking here is also empowered by local values and opportunities, really providing a training that allows our communities to see them within the process and see their roles out on the land as essential for this work. Next slide. And I think this is now passing it off to, summarizing our goals and objectives. So again, yesterday we talked about how we're really focusing on building capacity and promoting a resilience, but really the main objectives here are to create a very place-based training curriculum that involves culturally informed and inclusive perspectives for how to do environmental monitoring and use these tools. And we're aiming to have about 50 individuals qualified for positions, such as technicians, environmental data collection, working in IDAP offices, and or partnering with federal and state agencies to collect information on the land. Next slide.
So looking at our curriculum roadmap, again, just our focus is creating an innovative ISN training curriculum that is centered on place-based and culturally relevant education to be inclusive of the unique cultures represented by the partnership regions. Curriculum goals and objectives will be identified through community needs and focused around supporting them to build long-term capacity at their individual agency. These will be identified through ISN's already established network and the consistent communication regional coordinators will have across our partners. Our curriculum team also really prides ourselves on accessible and transparent resources. So I want to note that while the curriculum will be provided through Elisabeth College, the training videos and some of the short training modules will also be embedded into the existing ISN mobile apps for easy access to users. Next slide. And then looking at our proposed ISN course structure, we will work to create 3 courses over the next 8 months, 2 one-credit courses, one on how to utilize the software, and then the other on how to be an administrator within ISN. And then we'll also be creating a 3-credit course on environmental monitoring. This will cover basic data management, data access policies, how to create structures for environmental monitoring work within your community/tribe, and basic citizen science. Students will explore questions like, what is data sovereignty? What kind of data should you collect and log? How can you communicate data out effectively? With an overarching learning objective that individuals will learn to design, implement, and start an environmental monitoring program within their community or agency. This will be accredited through Elisabeth College, and we will additionally work with individual communities to just identify the best format of the course since each community has a different need. Our case managers will also leverage other already established Elisabeth coursework where needed for individuals that will enter our training program. This could include coursework like presented dating effectively, introduction to tribal management, or Indigenous sciences. And this work from these courses will also allow us to identify other courses in the future needed for development, both for Elisabeth College's expanding science programs, but also for the creation of an established ISN certificate program at the college. Next slide.
Thank you. Yes, and just to begin to wrap up, and I know we're the last presenters, so we'll get through this, but just to reiterate, we're having a really holistic approach to this. And so as Haley said, we're doing anything from meeting communities' requests to going ahead and just, I know that my priority, I know we have a community of individuals that want to use this tool. We need to just get training on how to do that longer 3-credit course where we're really starting to focus and again, center the empowerment of decision making and to help having people understand the broader perspective of how this work can help them with climate resilience, with skill development, and with data collection. And so we're providing a number of wraparound services, including access to those tools, the programmatic support, knowledge sharing through the network and collaboration, so that can help with funding decisions or just knowing and learning from best practices from across the region. Our regional coordinators will help also provide outreach services to help trainees apply those skills in the communities. The Bering Sea campus is also providing case management to help personalize that enrollment, support them through that training, certification support. And so we really see the scalability and the broader application of this type of work. And I think we have one more last slide and then we'll wrap up there.
Yeah, I'll be really quick with this in our timeline. But essentially, right, as everyone's noting, we're exiting our planning phase, really entering our design phase where the bulk of our curriculum development work will take place. And then our year 2, and again, our slides are a little off, but our year 2 and year 3 is kind of just cyclical in our objectives that we're doing. Our case managers will work to recruit and enroll students and support them through the training program. Our curriculum development team will adapt the necessary coursework as needed. And again, our regional coordinators will work with those community agencies to build jobs and capacity within their individual agency. And last slide, again, just teaching Kagasakun. We thank you all for your time, excited for our breakout sessions. And we'll put our email in the chat so that it is visible, but it is isn@aleut, aleut.com. So you guys can reach us there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannah, Marie, Haley. We do have one question for the two of you, so don't disappear quite yet. The question is, will you be providing multiple iterations of curriculum to be inclusive of the multiple tribal entities partnering through this initiative? In other words, meaning have a training curriculum per training entity?
Yeah, so I can answer that question, but essentially there are like 7 primary cultural regions within Alaska, and so we'll use that as a baseline to kind of tailor through each region. When we develop our curriculum within the tribal government, like one of our standards that we actually use are cultural values. So we know that like our training is not tailored correctly if we do not encompass at least one traditional value. So we'll do that per region. That will be one of our approaches. And then yes, and working with individual communities, like it'll be both making sure and ensuring that our activities are open-ended so that, you know, individual communities can prioritize and talk about what is happening within, within their community itself. And then also using that as a data collection tool for our ISN team as well. But then again, right, through that individual tailored approach with our communities, we'll work to adapt accordingly. It won't be as like vast as, you know, out of the 229 tribal governments, they each have a different curriculum content. It'll be more that we're working in those areas to make it as specific as possible.
And last, just to add on, I think we also see the scalability and adaptability of this type of work. So we're also really hoping that this project can help set a model and help provide those kind of best practices for making it very tailored to regions. The ISN software is very customizable to the specific, you know, cultural preferences. There's also a custom branding aspect. So if the tribes wanted to have their own languages or traditional languages into the software, we have the ability to start working towards that. But we're really seeing that as guardians and monitoring programs are starting to scale across our nations and across the US, there's a great demand for training like this. And so we're looking forward to seeing how this model could also potentially be replicated for other tribes across the country too.
Thank you for that. Thank you both. I see that one of our organizers, Frank, has a question. Frank, would you like to come off mute and briefly?
Yeah, super quick question. I'm so intrigued about this model of how climate ready workforce is advancing. But one of the key pieces of the sectoral partnership are the employers. And I'm sorry, I came in late because I had a family issue that I had to attend to. And you may have already covered this, so I just more of my personal curiosity, but maybe you haven't. The employer part of this equation is really important. like as that scalable model, you think about who is the employer or employers in this space, that if you could just breathe out a little bit more for, that would be great.
Thank you, Frank. And we'll have just 1 minute for this answer, and then we'll wrap up for this session. Thanks.
So I can take that one. Thanks, Frank, for that. So the employer partners are already identified. Chugach Regional Resource Commission has wanting to hire a coordinator within their region to start with their environmental monitoring on marine mammals. Plinkett and Haida, as I mentioned, started their Seacoast Indigenous Guardians Network and is hiring 8 guardians within their communities. They've already established, I think, 6 of those 8, and are now just needing the training to start implementing that. Native Village of Igiagig also has a Bristol Bay Guardians. And then there's Coeric Inc., which represents Northern Bering Sea tribes. And they are looking to identify at least 4 to 5 individuals that they've worked on. So a lot of them are primarily through tribal government offices and employer partners. And then we also have a few programs through federal state agencies that are working with Fish and Game to do kind of seasonal tech hand field works that are kind of also based on more seasonal jobs. So there's a variety of full-time, seasonal to also part-time kind of compensation-based data collection too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that wraps up today's project presentations. And I have a few notes for everybody before we depart for a quick break. The next session will be a closed session. So that means there's a separate link for joining that those who are leading projects and their primary partners should have already received in their inbox. And so that'll get going at 3:30 today. And for those who are not in the closed session, we will reconvene the conversation tomorrow. The public session will start tomorrow at 3:30 and go to 5 p.m. So with that, we will, Poe, do you have any notes? I see you popped on screen before we part for break.
Yeah, if all the people who are attending the closed session can go ahead and click on that closed session link right now or soon after, that would really help Lauren, our tech expert here, and I get you guys sorted into the breakout sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Poe. All right, we'll break and we'll meet everybody for the closed session in that separate link very shortly. So please log on and then come at 3:30 ready for that session. Have a good day, everybody.